February 24th, the armed forces of the Russian Federation attacked Ukraine with all their might and from all directions. They made it under direct order of the President of Russia, Vladimir Putin. In his video address, he unloaded a number of false claims, including bizarre accusations of Ukraine in committing an alleged genocide which have zero factual evidence. He also called for a demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine, which shows that he exists in a completely parallel reality. Today, Ukraine has already addressed the International Court of Justice in The Hague to hold Russia accountable for manipulating the very notion of genocide in an attempt to justify its military aggression. The notion of genocide is one of the sacred elements of the post-Second World War international order. Manipulating it is unacceptable. When we prove in The Hague that this pretext was a complete fake, we will prove that Russian aggression is unjustified and unprovoked. I am sure that this day will come after we stop Putin. The Russian full-scale attack in the early hours of February 24th started, as I already said, in multiple directions simultaneously. In the east, in the occupied Donbas, from the south, in the occupied Crimea and Black Sea, from the northeast, and from the territory of Belarus. These included indiscriminate bombing of cities and towns with all types of rockets, cruise missiles, aviation, as well as crossing of ground forces into our territory. Multiple objects of critical infrastructure were damaged. Civilians have been killed and wounded in indiscriminate shelling since the first hours of the military aggression. Kiev was bombed heavily, which was the worst moment for Ukraine's capital since 1941, when it was bombed by Nazi Germany. And it's remarkable, I have to say, how President Putin's actions remind and follow the pattern of Adolf Hitler. I want to underline that since the very beginning of the territory of Belarus was used for the aggression. Right now, Ukrainian territory is being shelled not only from Russia, but also from the territory of Belarus. And Alexander Lukashenko may at any moment give an order to send in Belarusian army alongside the Russian army to the territory of Ukraine to kill Ukrainian men, women, elderly, and children. This is the risk, the threat that we have to take into account. For the fourth consecutive day, the Ukrainian armed forces, National Guard, National Police, units of territorial defense, and the entire defense forces of Ukraine resist and fight back Russian invaders. Ukraine's ability to resist has been extremely high and unexpectedly high for Putin. I want to stress that in the first 4 days of Russia's invasion, Russia has not achieved a single strategic goal. President Putin had planned to conduct a blitzkrieg operation to force Ukraine on its knees, break us down, make us retreat and capture our capital, Kyiv. None of this has happened. We are bleeding, but we are inflicting disastrous losses on the enemy. According to the newest data by Ukraine's Ministry of Defense, the overall Russian losses in these 3.5 days are approximately at the following numbers. Ukraine downed 46 Russian war aircrafts, 26 helicopters. We destroyed 146 tanks, 706 armored vehicles, 49 cannons, 1 missile complex Buk, the same one that was used to shut down MH17 flight in 2014 when Russia killed hundreds of innocent lives. We also destroyed 30 vehicles, 60 cisterns, 2 drones and 2 boats. Russian losses of troops are at roughly 4,300 killed in action and wounded in action. Hundreds of Russian soldiers became prisoners of war. This data is preliminary because battles are ongoing and the exact numbers fluctuate. At this moment, heavy fighting continues. The enemy was able to move forward in the south of Ukraine, in the northeast and in the north, including in the Chernobyl exclusion zone. Movements of Russian heavy armored vehicles there have disturbed the radioactive soil, which has already led to an increase of radiation levels. Russians maintain control over the confinement and the station itself, prohibiting due rotation of personnel. This is a clear violation of international nuclear safety rules. But even with these local advances and with such catastrophic losses, Putin, as I already mentioned, has not been able to achieve a single strategic goal. No major city is captured by the Russians. Despite numerous attempts of shelling, bombing, and ground offensive on the capital city of Kiev, the enemy has not been able to take any control. Ukraine's defense forces fought back all of the attacks on cities. Some heavy fighting took place in Kiev in recent days, but in all cases, the groups trying to invade the city were destroyed. Now, I want to draw your attention to Russia's war crimes committed in the process of the invasion. On February 25th, Russian army shelled with imprecise Grad missiles an orphanage in Vorzel, Kiev region. 50 kids were inside at the moment of the attack. On the same day, Russian artillery, an even heavier Uragan, hit a kindergarten in Ochtyrka, Sumy region. At least 5 people died and 15 were heavily injured, all civilians, including children. One more child succumbed to his wounds later in the hospital. In the morning on February 26, Russian invaders shot down an entire civilian family in Novakakhovka, Kherson region. 56-year-old Anna and Oleg Fedko, Irina Fedko, and 2 grandchildren. 6-year-old Anna and 18-month-old Ivan are dead. Multiple civilian objects were hit, dozens of residential buildings in major cities. A multi-storage building in Kiev was hit with a cruise missile. Oil refinery in the city of Vasilkiv was hit this night, threatening an ecological catastrophe. These are only a few of hundreds of war crimes committed by Russia in Ukraine in the course of its blatant military aggression. I assure Russian war criminals that we will bring all of them to responsibility in international courts. You will face justice for what you did. No matter how much time and effort it takes us, we will not rest until all of the criminals responsible for the deaths of our men, women, and children killed during these war crimes are put behind bars. Now, to the international reaction. First of all, I would like to thank from the bottom of my heart to the hundreds of millions of people abroad, Ukrainian communities and foreigners who demonstrated and continue to demonstrate their solidarity with Ukraine, demand their governments to act, donate money and provide other support to Ukraine's defense. We see you. We feel your support. Ukraine is not falling. We are bleeding, but we continue to successfully defend ourselves. So should you continue to do everything possible to help us win this fight. Those foreign individuals who have the will and ability to fight alongside Ukrainians against invaders are welcome to join the International Legion of the Territorial Defense of Ukraine. Please address Ukrainian embassies in your countries for further details. We have been working hard during these dark times to quickly consolidate a global anti-Putin coalition of states which support the free Ukraine and oppose Russian war criminals. At this moment, this coalition includes 84 states and 13 international organizations. Russia already faces massive isolation. I thank all countries which have already severed ties and cut any engagement with Russia on international and bilateral level. Putin has effectively closed the window to Europe, opened 300 years ago by his predecessor, Peter I. This is a turning point in the history of Russia, which will certainly plunge ordinary Russians into poverty and isolation, as well as may lead to the collapse of the Russian political system as such. Belarus will face similar consequences as an accomplice of the crime of aggression against Ukraine if it continues to provide its territory and, God forbid, its human resources to the Russian aggression against Ukraine. Governments around the world have already imposed massive costs on the Russian economy, elite and ordinary people. Sanctions hit Russia's biggest banks, its weapons industry, its largest energy company, and everyone close to Putin. Coalition of allies have also cut Russia off access to financial and economic tools, banning all operations, stopping the issuing of visas to Russians, and many other actions. I also welcome the creation of a special group to research Russian assets abroad. The list of actions is too long to name all now. However, and what I'm going to say is extremely important, I want to warn every government that might think now that after imposing these sanctions they can rest. Sanctions and actions must be elevated. The pressure must be elevated until Russia and its accomplice Belarus stop killing Ukrainians and bombing our cities, our men, women, and children. Until Russia entirely withdraws its forces from Ukraine and deoccupies our territories. This is the end goal of the anti-Putin coalition in the world. Unfortunately, there are no signs that Russia is ready to do it and to stop the war. Hence, I call on you to hit Russia more, hit Russia harder, hit Russia now. It's a matter of hours and not days to do this important, to make these important decisions and to make these steps. We, Ukrainians, do it on the front line, sacrificing our lives. And we have only one request to you: back us up. I want also to say a few separate words to those few European governments which are now trying to water down the sanctions packages, including the banning of Russia from SWIFT. And I will not be diplomatic. Some countries are trying to leave loopholes, exclude a number of banks so that they can apply some measures with their left hands and continue to trade with Russia with their right hands. Stop doing this now. Stop trading with the blood of Ukrainian men, women, and children. This is not a metaphor, but the reality of what you are doing. History will judge you, and your names will forever remain in history books as names of traitors of humanity who failed to oppose the aggressor in Europe at a crucial time. There are examples of such names in the 20th century. I am confident you do not want to add your names after a comma. It is critically important that Russia is disconnected from SWIFT on the fullest possible extent. All possible banks. Don't play political games and stop earning money soaked in our blood. Let's stop Putin. Let's stop the war. Let's restore the world order and the European order. And only then will you be able to restore at least some of the business connections with Russia, not to mention the political ones. The second most fundamental issue right now is global and severe sanctioning of the Central Bank of Russia. Once again, we demand and we need immediate steps to impose a full financial isolation of Russia from all civilized systems, applying to all Russian banks, including its central bank. Some actions were already taken, and we are deeply grateful to our partners for them, but they are not enough. Peace needs more. It's not us, Ukrainians, who need it. It's peace in Europe, it's the world order that needs more actions. We also demand to impose a full oil and gas embargo on Russia. These oil and gas now also contain Ukrainian blood. Anyone buying it has to be ashamed of doing so. I welcome the first decisive steps by a number of European countries in this regard and urge all anti-Putin coalition allies to proceed without delay with the strongest possible measures. I would like to thank all partners who have already provided Ukraine with weapons to defend itself from Russian invaders. We will never forget your help. Never forget your help at this dark moment. I urge all countries to provide Ukraine with more weapons, ammunition, supplies, equipment and fuel. We need weapons to fight, to defend our country. We specifically need anti-tank, anti-air, anti-missile weapons. We need more air-to-air and ground-to-air missiles to counter invaders. We need more drones, more vehicles, aircraft, artillery, guns, machine guns, ammunition, everything that can help us defend ourselves from Russia, from its armed aggression aimed at killing Ukrainians and destroying our country. It is obvious, I think everyone agrees now after this week, that the goal of Russia is to destroy Ukraine as a state, is to destroy Ukrainians as a nation. But we will not fall. We will not stop or get tired. This is people's war. It's not a war between one state and another. It's a war between President Putin and the people of Ukraine. We are determined to fight back fiercely as long as it is needed to defend our land and our people. We are determined to defeat Russia the same way as we defeated the previous monster in Europe 80 years ago. And I'm sure that we will prevail. Thank you for your attention. I stand ready to open your questions.
And the first question comes from Alexander Stashevsky, the Associated Press, who asks, it's reported that Russian delegation is waiting for Ukrainian delegation to arrive for talks in Belarus. Could you confirm that Ukraine will participate in these talks? What will be conditions for peace settlement that Ukraine is ready to accept?
Again, first, do not approach the talks from the perspective of what Ukraine is ready to accept. I would like to remind you that just a couple of days ago, when the war started, Russia was not interested in any talks at all. After they suffered losses and realized that their plan doesn't go as it was actually planned and designed, and the blitzkrieg failed, Russia started speaking with the language of ultimatums, saying that they are ready to talk with Ukraine with preconditions that have to be met before talks begin. As Russia continued to suffer, as they experienced one defeat after another, the demands, the preconditions, the ultimatums by Russia were put aside, and now they convey the message to us that they just want to talk. So I think that the fact that Russia is ready to hold talks without any preconditions, without any ultimatums, without any demands addressed to Ukraine, is already a victory for Ukraine. Second, we, of course, as I said, we appreciate all the support that we received recently from friends from all across the globe. But it's us who are fighting. It's our people who are dying. It's our houses that are being destroyed. Today, we were as close as ever to the entry of Belarusian armed forces into the war. And this is why President Zelensky and President Lukashenko spoke today, because we have to defend our northern flank, and we have to minimize the threats coming from there. So we agreed to send a delegation to the location, to the venue on the Ukrainian-Belarusian border. We will not go to Homel, the city in Belarus that serves as a military base for Russia. We will meet on the border, and we go there to listen to what Russia wants to say. We are going there without any previous talks, without preliminary agreement on what the outcome of these talks can be. We are going there to listen, and we are going there to say what we think of this war and Russia's actions. So, between now and the moment that the talks are wrapped up, President Lukashenko assured President Zelensky that no Belarusian military force will be used against Ukraine. And this is already an achievement, and we can only hope that Alexander Lukashenko will stick to his word. Between now and the moment when these talks wrap up, we will continue to fiercely defend our country, to defeat Russian forces if they try to continue their offensive operations. We will continue to defeat them in the territories that they have taken under their control. We will not stop until we defend our country entirely. So there is nothing bad in talking as such, and if the outcome of these talks will be peace and the end of war, that should be welcomed. But we will not, again, and I want to make it very clear, we will not surrender, we will not capitulate, we will not give up a single inch of our territory. This is not the goal of our fight.
Frederick Best says, Swiss magazine Schweizer Soldat, President Zelensky has announced, friends of Ukraine who want to join the defense, come, we will give you a weapon. And the question is, does the president invite foreigners to serve in the Ukrainian army? If yes, how do you implement these measures? Do they receive a special visa?
President Zelensky issued a special decree on the formation of the International Legion as part of the territorial defense of Ukraine. I want you to understand what territorial defense is. Territorial defense is a special branch of the armed forces of Ukraine. It consists of people living in their villages and houses and towns, people who are ready to pick up arms to defend Ukraine. There are dozens, hundreds of examples when local residents are fighting the invaders by all means available to them. And this is again why what is happening is people's war. So, as a next step, in the last 3 days, virtually since the very beginning of the Russian aggression, we started to receive many hundreds of requests from foreigners, including from Ukrainian diaspora, who were willing to come to Ukraine and help us defend our land. Some want to do so because they love Ukraine, because they want to defend it. Some understand that Putin attacked not only Ukraine, but the European security and the global order, the world order as such, and they want to stand up to defend it. Some have unsettled accounts with Russia, and they want to fight specifically Russia, without any regard to specific Ukrainian interests. But all of these people, they now have a legal right and a legal framework to join our forces and to fight under the chain of command of the Ukrainian army. All of them are welcome, and every embassy of Ukraine, every consulate general of Ukraine is open to provide such people with all necessary information. Their access to Ukraine will be facilitated to the extent possible. to the maximum extent possible. The only big logistical problem that we have is, of course, because of the fact that Russia conducts airstrikes. You cannot reach Ukraine by plane. You have to reach Ukraine by land. But we will be helping you. Come and fight, if you're willing to do so.
Salman Andari, Sky News Arabia. Putin has just ordered his strategic deterrence forces to a special mode. What does this mean to you, and do you expect this war to continue and things get more complicated?
As you noticed, this order by President Putin came shortly after the announcement was made about 2 delegations ready to meet. And we see this announcement, this order, as an attempt to raise stakes and to put additional pressure on the Ukrainian delegation. But we will not give in to this pressure. We, as I said earlier, we will approach these talks with a very simple approach. We go there to listen what Russia has to say, and we will tell them what we think of all this. And what we are ready to discuss is how to stop the war and deoccupy our territories. Full stop. If Russia, if the decision of, if the order of President Putin to put on high alert his nuclear weapons is a direct threat to use these nuclear weapons against Ukraine, then I have a very simple message. It will be a catastrophe for the world, but it will not break us down.
Xavier Derala, civil media in Frontline, North Macedonia, and the question is, what is your message to the Russian human rights and peace activists?
In the recent days, hundreds, if not thousands, of the Russians protested against the Putin's aggression against Ukraine. According to the information that we possess, even people belonging to the close circle of President Putin, they are against this war because they understand the detrimental, the damaging, the devastating consequences of this conflict for Russia itself. So far, he refuses to listen to them. He went completely mad with his obsession to destroy Ukraine, to deprive us of the right to exist. And all these human rights activists, all ordinary Russians who went out to the streets, they are the voice of sanity, the voice of reason that must be heard. Because it's them, in the end, it's them who will suffer the most from the devastating consequences of the war. So I can only call on the Russian government to finally listen to the voice of their own people and to start taking care of their problems. Start resolving internal, domestic problems of Russia, and it has many of them, instead of attacking neighbors, instead of trying to destroy another nation.
And I think the last one, Mohammed Mustafa Turkmen, Turkish Defense Agency. Did Turkey give arms support? Did they have an offer to do it?
We enjoy excellent relations with Turkey. Our cooperation in defense sector has evolved in a very sustainable way for months and years. And we bought some weapons from Turkey. There are many issues where Turkey supports us, and we appreciate that support. Unlike many other countries, Turkey was working on us on defense before others joined this cause. And frankly speaking, you know, yesterday Germany decided, just an example, yesterday Germany made a complete U-turn in its policy on supplying weapons to Ukraine. 5 days ago, German leadership was saying that Germany will not change its policy and will not be supplying weapons to Ukraine. Now they are doing it. This is appreciated. We appreciate this change of policy. But if they had done it before, months and years ago, we wouldn't have had this war. Ukrainians would not have paid with their lives, with their health, for the Russian aggression. Russian aggression against Ukraine that is taking place today is the result of many years of appeasement of Russia by many leaders, many European leaders. And now I'm happy that they opened eyes and they finally believed in what Ukraine has been telling them about Russia for the last 8 years. It's too late, but the change is welcome. We need now to receive all these weapons as soon as possible. Every hour counts. It's not a matter of our win or defeat. We will prevail. I'm absolutely confident in that because we stand for the right cause. It's a matter of how many lives will be saved. And we want to save as many of them as possible. Thank you.
That exhausts questions, so we can finish.
Thank you. I hope my briefing was helpful. We, the Foreign Ministry, stand ready to continue communicating with you through our press service and provide you with all relevant materials and background information. Please, one of the front line of this war is disinformation by Russia. Is the attempt of Russia to disseminate various fakes about Ukraine, various arguments to legitimize, to find an excuse for its war against Ukraine. Let's be clear, what's happening here is an aggression. The most obvious case of the aggression. And I deeply appreciate the role of the international media in exposing Russia's lies, in telling the truth about the fight of the Ukrainian people against the aggressor. Thank you for this.